I'm Clarkstown Supervisor George Hoehmtown. On November 11th, Veterans Day, and throughout the month of November, we remember all veterans, all who have put on the uniform and served our country. Today, we have 4 stories of 5 veterans who not only served during war, but continue to serve. Thanks for joining us on this special Veterans Day edition of Hometown Happenings. Our first story is of a father and son. John the Wojciech is an Army veteran, and his son Grant is on his own path towards service. Together they've helped create a place of remembrance and healing for those gone but not forgotten. Here's Joe Beckerly at the Trail of the Fallen.
On a bluff in the Hudson Highlands, just south of West Point, stands a monument. Built over time, day by day, stone by stone. Since 9/11, this memorial has grown steadily. Stones placed here in memory of those who served, those who made the ultimate sacrifice. At this popular hiking spot on the top of Hoehmtown Mountain is where you'll find the memorial. In 2013, as part of a Boy Scouts Eagle Scout project, it became known as the Trail of the Fallen.
So the Trail of Fallen really started when an old warrior named Hank Kersey, when his sons were going through Ranger School, he would carry up rocks up for every phase that they went through. But then when 9/11 happened, he really started to carry up a rock for each victim. And then, especially as the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan started to ramp up, people would actually start coming up here just to reflect and remember.
A Nanuet High School and West Point graduate, class of 1993, John the Wojciech deployed 3 times to the Middle East since 9/11. But it was the death of a family friend, Tom Kennedy, a fellow West Point graduate who was killed in action, which became the inspiration of a young boy's Eagle Scout project, John's son Grant.
Your Eagle Project is your culminating event as a Boy Scout, and that was really the motivating factor for me, was just those family members and friends and people I know and don't know who gave the ultimate sacrifice to pay tribute to them.
So Grant went to work. He erected a kiosk at the head of the trail, marked the trail for hikers, raised $5,000 to install 2 450-pound benches in memory of Tom Kennedy and West Point cadet Darren Hidalgo, and of course, worked with the Palisades Park Commission through all of it, getting permission to do the work and have the trail renamed.
The Trail of Fallen was something that my parents and I came up with. I think it really embodies what we're looking to heal with and allow people to recognize and reflect on. Luckily, I had a bunch of cadets at the time, Company F3, and then a bunch of volunteers, whether they were Boy Scouts or family friends, family members. They came and helped get those benches up to the top, build that kiosk, and paint the whole trail.
It was so impressive to see a 13-year-old boy so dedicated to this that he was able to plan, execute, and coordinate all of it. It just was a Herculean effort and really just makes me swell with pride.
It was emotional. It was awesome to see this ambitious project. It took many months to actually physically do it and like a year to complete all the paperwork and planning. And so as any project is, it's awesome to see it come to a head. It's crazy to see the impact that you have on something that's so meaningful to someone.
And people have come. Since before 2001, but mostly after its dedication in 2014, the monument has grown and people have come, with a stone in hand to find the peace they seek. To this cathedral, people most definitely have come.
On a random Tuesday, I get a call or a text or an email or a DM or whatever it may be from just a random person who hiked the trail and wanted to tell me how impactful it was, or a Gold Star family who wanted to tell me it was a great opportunity for them to reflect and see that the nation as a whole is honoring their son, daughter, brother, sister, wife, husband, whoever it may be. in the long run, that's been the most impactful part for me, is seeing the long-term impacts it has on other people, because that's really the intent, and to see that it came to a head with other people is the best part.
There's no words that can explain the power of what this monument, this rock cairn in this place really has become, not in a thing, but in really what it represents.
Grant Novoychuk followed in his father's footsteps and joined the Long Gray Line. He's a senior at the United States Military Academy and will graduate this year with the class of 2023. For this special Veterans Day edition of Hometown Happenings, I'm Joe Beckerly.
John Novoychuk retired from the Army in 2018 as a lieutenant colonel. He now serves in the athletic department at West Point. Speaking of Army West Point athletics, if you're an Army football fan like I am, you may know the name Mike Vitti, an outstanding Army football player in the early 2000s and currently on the football coaching staff. After his military career ended, he knew there was more he needed to do. Again, here's Joe Beckerly with the story of Mike's Hike for Heroes.
As a fullback on the Army football team, Mike Vitti made a name for himself as a runner. But his legacy came through walking. A 2008 West Point graduate and combat veteran in Afghanistan, Vitti retired from the Army in 2013, but the desire to serve still burned inside him.
When I transitioned out of service, I always wanted to, give back. And the groups of people that I wanted to represent, it immediately went to, our nation's Gold Star families. Of those who've made the ultimate sacrifice, you think of the widows, you think of the sons and daughters, you think of the brothers and sisters, the mothers and fathers.
And that became Vitti's new mission, to bring awareness to Gold Star families. And so he walked, or rather hiked, for 232 days, Mike's Hike for Heroes, a kilometer for every service member killed in action.
The hike was truly a vehicle, number one, to honor, at that time, the nearly 7,000 men and women who courageously gave their life in the global war on terror. Number two, to connect with their families and say, just as a grateful, born-again civilian, thank you for the sacrifice you'll forever have to endure. And then bring the American public kind of to the table to be like, why is this guy turning into Forrest Gump? Why is he walking all this way? What's his passion? What's the reason behind it? For me, during the hike, the inspiration wasn't just the breadth of the hike itself, and as far as the duration or the miles or anything like that. It was really the, hey, what could I do? Hands open, heart open, mind open. What could I do?
So in April of 2014, Vitti started walking from north to south, from west to east, ending at the Army-Navy game in Baltimore. Along the way, meeting with Gold Star families, hearing their stories, and spreading awareness.
The hike was one thing. The physical, taxing part of it was one thing. The thing that caught me completely off guard was meeting the families. That was the most emotionally draining part of it. So when you get into the training for it, the preparation, the actual hike itself, it was always just the draw people to a table, and then the other 99% is way, way, way more important.
And then there were the names. Names he wrote on flags. New names every day on flags that Vitti carried from sea to shining sea. The name of every single service member who died in service of that flag.
Moreover, was when we were with the families and they wrote their loved one's name on that flag. To me then, when I write a name, I'm doing something to honor them, and I'm sure people are like, wow, that's incredible. But when you meet the families and they wrote the names, and I carry those flags across the country that they swore an oath and allegiance to protect, we owe them everything.
For any Army football player, there's nothing more important than the Army-Navy game. It was an appropriate and logical endpoint for his hike. As Vitti made his way towards Baltimore in 2014, the final two names on his list were reserved for a fallen teammate, Chase Presnicki, and a fallen rival.
The last 2 kilometers were dedicated to Chase and J.P. Blecksmith, who was a Navy quarterback who passed away. Ed Blecksmith was there with us. And so was Emily Presnicki, the widow of Chase, and Chase's family. That day was kind of brought a lot of it together unintentionally. You know, I just thought Army Navy, very superficially, in the beginning was just about, hey, this is a good finish line. It's a good place to culminate the hike, but all the other ancillary stuff that happened and brought into that day was very, very magical.
And even though the hike is over, the mission of supporting Gold Star families will never end.
I think that's a forever thing for me. I'll never sit there and say we've crossed the finish line. You know, we were able to create a nonprofit from the hike. Every year we do a Gold Star family reunion at Army Navy. I met with 67 families during my hike across America in 14 different states. Those families, you know, still come to our events when that synergy of service with loss, and it's not forgotten and it's carried forth. And that's what, you know, I think the legacy of the hike is. It's that, you know, people are just helping people, and that's really it.
As the mission continues, you too can get involved. To learn more about Mike's Hike for Heroes or how to help Gold Star families, visit legaciesalive.com. I'm Joe Beckerly for this special Veterans Day edition of Hoehmtown Happenings.
When we come back on this special Veterans Day edition of Hoehmtown Happenings, we have two Vietnam veterans whose pilgrimage back to that country brought unexpected healing while serving the descendants of the enemy. Stay with us. Welcome back to our special Veterans Day edition of Hoehmtown Happenings, where we are focusing on veterans who continue to serve. Ed Frank of West Nyack, along with Howard Golden of Suffern, both are Vietnam veterans. Ed in the Navy, Howard in the Army. They didn't know each other at the time and only met years later as members of a local Rotary Club. But together they formed STEP, Schools to End Poverty, an organization that now builds schools in Vietnam. While giving an educational program in 2004 to Felix Vesta middle schoolers about the Vietnam War, Ed Frank and Howard Golden were approached by a young Vietnamese girl who was adopted by an American family.
We asked her to come up and show us where she was born in Vietnam. And she pointed to a town a little north of Hanoi, so immediately we knew that she was the granddaughter of a North Vietnamese soldier.
We all froze because we never thought we'd be speaking to the daughter or child of a Vietnamese enemy.
And she raised the question about the war. She said, how come you refer to it as the Vietnam War? It was our country, you were Americans. We referred to it as the American War.
But it just made us stand still and rethink what we were talking about. And an 8th grader educated a bunch of old men.
Ed and Howard had already been considering a trip back to Vietnam to revisit their past, and meeting that young Vietnamese girl was the spark that made it happen in 2005.
For me personally and others, it was to get rid of some of the poison we had in us about the country, the war, etc. 13 veterans and 4 civilians went back to Vietnam. We were going back to put our past behind us.
During a lunch stop on that first trip, a chance encounter with their former enemy brought the healing they sought.
And as we were there, we noticed that local cadre were coming in, and they were celebrating the 30th anniversary of the United States leaving Vietnam. And they found out that we were American soldiers and sailors and Marines, and they asked if they could sit down and talk with us.
We found out we were sitting with our former enemy, and they wanted to discuss war and peace. And for me, personally, that's the day my war left.
One of them decided to toast us. And in his toast, he said to us, it's so much better for you and us to be here 30 years later, toasting each other with a can of beer, than behind the butt of a rifle trying to kill each other. And for a number of us that day, it was closure. The war was over, it was done with, it was put to rest.
That first trip also revealed to these former soldiers a Vietnam that hadn't changed all that much in the 30 years since the war ended.
Well, we toured all of Vietnam in going to everybody's base camp, and we saw poverty, we saw children working the sex trade, and it was extreme, and we saw the effects of Agent Orange left behind.
The thing that impressed us all was the children. And we take an awful lot of things for granted in this country. But when you deal with a third world country, you see the poverty, you see the neglect, you see the need. And the best way to break that poverty cycle is through education.
And a group of Dominican sisters approached us and asked us, is there any way we could help them? And that was the impetus really for us to start to building schools in Vietnam.
And so STEP was formed, Schools to End Poverty. In 16 years, from more than 9,000 miles away, led by Ed and Howard, the STEP team has completed a massive amount of humanitarian work.
I never thought we would go this far. I mean, we have raised and given away almost $900,000. STEP is truly a 100% volunteer giveaway organization, and I yearned for the day that I could go back, and I never thought I'd say that, going back to an area where it's left a lot of scars on me, physically and emotionally. Because of this journey, we know that there are at least 1,500 kids being educated every single day. And that's pretty powerful, knowing that you're giving a child the ability to get an education.
To date, they've helped to build 6 schools and 3 orphanages. They've brought more than 3 tons of supplies that include everything from toothpaste to smart boards, all in an effort to help the descendants of people who were once the enemy.
And it's gone full circle because over the 16 years that we've been involved, children have come into the program, graduated, and then went on to work. I mean, to have a student who just got out of college and has a job in Saigon to come to us and said, listen, you guys made a difference in my life. I want to sponsor a child. I mean, that's the completion. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, you know.
The STEP group has made 13 trips back to Vietnam with 136 veterans who were able to return, face their past, and find healing, while also helping the next generation of Vietnamese have the opportunity for a better life through education. And plans are in the works for another trip to Vietnam, this time next year. If you're a veteran interested in joining them on this pilgrimage, visit schoolstoendpoverty.org. When we come back, a pre-Memorial Day tradition in Congers. Stay tuned. Thanks for joining us on this special Veterans Day edition of Hometown Happenings. On an early spring day, almost a decade ago, Sean McGee, a Congers Navy veteran, happened to come across a group of people and a big bus coming through his hometown. It was a nonprofit group that was carrying the Stars and Stripes from West Point to Dallas ahead of Memorial Day to remember all those service members who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thanks to McGee's efforts, this group has made its swing through Congers a memorable and yearly community tradition, so all can help carry the load.
Carry the Load is a organization that its mission is just to restore the true meaning of Memorial Day. That's where it originated from. It has morphed into a greater mission of supporting not just military and veterans, but also first responders. 2012, 2013, it was one of the, in April, they were actually walking through the town of Congers. I had parked the bus on my street, so I knocked on the door of the bus, and I met Stephen Holly and Dill Driscoll. Stephen's one of the founders of Carry the Load.
For the better part of a decade since that initial chance meeting, Sean McGee has helped to create a Carry the Load rally point in his hometown of Clarkstown.
The East Coast Rally is what we call it. The relay starts that morning in West Point Cemetery, and a walker or a bike rider will carry the American flag every 5 miles. In Patricia Avenue, Congers, there are people that want to do the walk with the bus and the flag. We'll meet at Patricia and Old Haverstraw Road, and we usually get anywhere from 200 to 500 people with that walk. Children, Boy Scouts, Little Leagues. And we walk from Patricia all the way down through town, and that's where the ceremony continues.
Once at Congers Station Park, The rally continues with the recognition of fallen veterans, moments of silence, and the laying of wreaths.
Congress particularly is, Clarkstown is a huge supporters of veterans, has a lot of past generations. Rockland County per capita is the largest Vietnam veteran population in the country. So there's a lot of meaning behind it and reasons to do it in Congress.
Liberty and justice for all.
In addition, McGee's company, Anchor Trading, offers a $5,000 scholarship to a high school senior who writes an essay on what Memorial Day means to them.
It's grown substantially. You know, there's been years where we've had 800-900 people. It's been pretty good. It's a great rally. It's a really great thing for our town. I think it's great for everyone who's connected to any sort of first responder, military, veteran.
It's an event that the town has fully embraced.
Colors, present, heart.
In short, it is a slice of Americana from days gone by, where neighbors come out to honor the flag, recognize the fallen, and help those who, as a result of their service, are in need.
I think the common reaction that I always see is an enormous amount of gratitude and thanks for doing it. You know, the people love. You know, I think all Americans are intuitively love our veterans. They love our first responders. It's an interactive way for people to actually see what it means to be an American. I think we're all very proud of what we've done. I think we want to just keep the message going. We would love more people to be involved. And getting involved really just means coming to it.
Carry the Load comes through Clarkstown in Congers in early May, and it's one of its first stops. It's a great opportunity for local residents and community members to walk and to honor the sacrifices of our nation's heroes. That'll do it for this special Veterans Day edition of Hometown Happenings. I'm Clarkstown Supervisor George Hoehmtown. Thanks for watching, and especially thank you to all of our veterans who have served in the United States Armed Forces and continue to serve others in so many unique and varied ways.